As a Hyrox athlete, you certainly don't need to be a power lifter, right? You don't need to have the highest 1RM of the whole floor. Rather the opposite. You even see this in CrossFit athletes. Maybe, you know, Gommaar is a Brazilian athlete who can snatch in incredible amounts, but he's actually never winning the actual CrossFit games, right? Like he lifts the best. He probably has the highest percentage of muscle, type 2 muscle fibers, but it doesn't mean that he also wins in longer workouts, and just overall across the board in CrossFit is not always going to be the best. Obviously he's very good, but it's not the absolute GOAT. And that's, I think, something that sometimes also when I see online people training for Hyrox, CrossFit, that's something else for Hyrox, they're doing 1-2 reps or close to their 1RM. I'm like, why would you actually do that? I mean, try to maybe build also the 20 RM, right? Or 15 RM. Obviously, it's a bit harder and not so fun to train, but I do think it has more bang for your buck for Hyrox athletes.
Interesting. Is there any correlation between somebody's 1 RM and their 20 RM?
So I mean, there will be correlation. There will be correlation for sure. Like there will be correlation, but maybe at the highest level or when you are getting closer to your specific sport, it's not that important. Like when you see the speed velocity curve, yes, there will be some correlation, but yeah, it's not 1-to-1. And for example, if you take me as a example, I have a very high 1RM from genetically. When I stepped into a CrossFit gym, I was always the strongest. But certainly in workouts and in Hyrox, for example, I would never win, right? So there is a correlation, but it's certainly not 1-to-1. And the strength endurance, I think, is much more trainable. It's much more forgeable than pure 1RMs. That's a lot of.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, so should a Hyrox athlete be doing any low rep strength training?
Maybe in specific parts of the season. It could be. I mean, there is some correlation, and I do think you have to train across the board, but the majority of training should be in the higher rep range. So maybe in a non-specific part of the season, quite far away from your actual specific training and competitions, you could try to improve your 1RM for 6 to 8 weeks, and then quite quickly go towards more powerful movements, more speed work, and also more high reps ranges, I would say. Yeah, so there is always a place. And also, I would say it really depends on the background of the athlete. Also, how we do it with our training plans. It's very important to have some knowledge about the background of the athlete. If it is a CrossFit athlete, which happens a lot, right? They probably have been doing for years 1RM back squats. I mean, it's a very typical thing in CrossFit to do 2RM, 3RM. It's also very important, I would say. Much more important than Hyrox. So for that athlete, I think it's almost, if he really wants to improve and shift his training to Hyrox, it's almost not important anymore. But when you have a triathlete and after some accommodation to the compound lifts, I do think you can give him or her 2-3 RMs. It's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so I now want to look into some more of the physiological testing you've been doing. And in particular, you've been looking at VO2 max, you've been looking at lactate. So you've also been doing some of this VO2 testing in functional fitness athletes. So what are some of the numbers that you're seeing in a functional fitness setting?
Yeah, so there's a lot of nuance to this. So, because we have done this in the lab, we invited, I think, 58 elite CrossFit athletes. I'm talking about games athletes, semifinalists, and all the top 5% of the open, so all well-trained athletes. And we put them on the bike. They're obviously not very used to. They do bike sometimes, but they're not endurance athletes at all. So you put them on the bike and we measured VO2. And we thought that certainly in the the games athletes, we would see values of 65 to 75. That would be always my guess, right? But we saw 55, 60 maybe in the best one, 61. Very strange. And also in some athletes that I know them, they do quite some biking. So they go out for mountain bike rides and so on. So it's not only, right? And that's interesting. So they don't have a very high VO2 max, and that has been confirmed by other studies that also have done in CrossFit athletes some of those testing. So there's two things you can think about. So one is simply, okay, they don't have a very high VO2 max. It's just how it is. All right. They have a lot of muscle mass. They are not aerobically trained. They have a massive anaerobic energy production that we know for sure. And that's why they just don't really need that much aerobic conditioning. That's one. It's probably part of the truth. But then also maybe you can think about, okay, but we didn't test him the right way, because a CrossFit athlete is really good at burpees and thrusters and wall balls and whatever, right? So maybe, and that's actually something where I just wrote an ethical application, we have to test them in a different way. We have to test them using a ramp test to exhaustion, using thrusters, burpees, whatever functional movements. And then maybe we see much higher values just because of the specificity of training. It's so important. We don't know. To be honest, we don't know the VO2 max. No one has ever done this. But yeah, my guess it would be that it would be certainly a bit higher. Yeah, we can go on about that, but that's basically how the state of the research is at this moment.
Yeah, fascinating. There's so many areas that are yet to be explored, and it's going to be super interesting to see more of this research coming out. But so walk us through the testing that you've done to date. So have you done any testing in kind of those burpees, that thruster type context, or is there literally nothing that's been done there yet?
No, so we have done this. So
Yes.
maybe
Okay.
maybe you've seen this online. Actually posted a video one time. So I've been invited by Adidas,
Yes.
yeah, the company, and as an external advisor, because they have obviously have signed a lot of CrossFit, but also Hyrox athletes to represent their brand. And one of the things in February, what they organized is like an athlete primer where people, all the athletes or many of the good athletes came into the laboratory and they asked me to design a test that would be beneficial for their training. So it's quite hard, right, in CrossFit athletes because they do everything already. And to design something that could actually be beneficial, not being a 1RM back squat, I mean, they know their 1RM back squat, it wouldn't give them too much ideas. So I was thinking, okay, let's do an exercise test to exhaustion using these burpees and thrusters and let them do something else than what they're used to. So I did this. So together with Mariah from WOD-Motions, it's very interesting, I think. We were able to assess the power production at each interval. So we ramped up the burpees as well as the thrusters in intervals of 1 minute. So what we did very briefly is we did 4 minutes on, 1 minute off, right? And during that 1 minute off, we took lactate. So we did burpees, thrusters, burpees, thrusters, burpees, 1 minute off. And then the next round, we did a little bit more burpees and heavier thrusters. And then until the athlete was exhausted. So pretty basic, but yeah, we had to think quite a bit how to start and so on. And there we didn't assess VO2. So we didn't. So we don't know. Right, because it's pretty tough with the mask, with the VO2 master, for example, to do it in thrusters because of the fact that you have to go around. It's not exactly ideal, I would say. Yeah, and if you, for example, start doing other movements, we have thought about this really long, like lunges, something that you could do with a mask, and even burpees. It's pretty hard to do this with a mask. So it's not that straightforward than you would think. But we took lactate, and also we just saw the performance of the athletes. And yeah, lactate was beautiful. So you can really see in the best athletes a very nice aerobic base, better than I would expect. Actually, they have some aerobic base, goes up linearly and then exponentially. The lesser, I mean not lesser, but the elite athletes who didn't rank to the top of the world, like maybe 50th in the world, but not 9th in the world, they actually have less, those curves went up faster. So they were suffering earlier, for example. So that's kind of exactly what you would expect as well. So I think the test is very valid. And yeah, we were able to also assess power production at each interval. And that power production nicely linearly increased, exactly how you would think about it as a running test or a bike test. So we're now going to validate this test in a lab in September. If now ethical, we don't have the permission yet, but they will give it to us. And then we're going to do this. We're going to, let's say, compare this with a CrossFit athlete, also Hyrox athlete, where you do such a test and also compare that with a bike test to exhaustion. So the same athlete, and see if there would be differences in VO2 max and so on, right? Never been done. We don't know, but I do think there would be some differences. So it's pretty exciting to start that one.
Yeah, super interesting. Yeah, and I've started to see some Hyrox athletes wear a VO2 master during simulations as well. So some of that data has been coming out. I remember seeing some stats from Alex Ronkovich, and he was hovering around 75% of his VO2 max for that roughly 1 hour sim. Yeah, it's just interesting to kind of benchmark it against some of the other endurance standards.
Maybe one thing I can add to this, and that's I think something interesting, again, very nuanced and something that not really has been thought about enough, I think. So one video that will be released literally next week, so maybe when this releases, what we also did at Adidas headquarters, we did assess actually VO2 as well. So we did another test where they did a 6-minute running economy test, very basic, what they always do in Adidas. They're very used to that with all their runners. So we assessed their running economy, like how much oxygen you're consuming at a given speed, right? And then right after, with a mask, like with a portable mask, we let them do deadlifts and lunges, 21:59 deadlifts and lunges. So 4 minutes, high intensity, hard, right? And then they went back and they did a 6-minute running test. All right. And then we assessed how the VO2 was affected the second time around by the fatiguing protocol, because that's very Hyrox specific, obviously. In the Hyroxes, we did similar, but we just let them do lunges. So no deadlifts and so on, but really specific like lunges, like 100 meters of lunges, lightweight. And then we want to know, okay, what happens with their VO2? And you saw that the VO2 was actually higher for the same speed. Right? So this means that their running economy was affected, negatively affected by the fatiguing protocol.